I'm Sarah. My last name is Zaeh. Um, Hello, thank you for being here. Before we get started, just wanted to have a few things that I mentioned about myself. I am with Firefly Agency in the operations department. I've been working in the insurance industry since 2015. I have experience building several websites for personal projects, and I help maintain Firefly's website and agent portal. My role primarily includes helping our agents with systems such as agency management system and comparative rater. The one that we use is called EZLynx, password management software, email accounts, and our various internal systems. Just so you know, my presentation style will feel sort of like a tutorial video and like a webinar hybrid. So with that being said, I'm excited to share what we've put together for you today. Before I move on, it's important to note that we are not web design experts. Please think of the following curated information as suggestions and perhaps a starting point rather than a perfect guide. So today's topics, having a well-planned and executed website is a valuable and necessary asset. It allows you to connect with your customers, build trust, nurture leads, promote your services, and ultimately grow your business. These days, not having a website could result in countless lost opportunities, less awareness from shoppers, and fewer customers. If you don't have a website yet, you'll want to consider getting one set up. Building a fully functioning site can appear challenging at first, but fortunately, it's nowhere near as hard as it seems. The four major topics we're going to be covering today is number one, domain names, and then website pages, different tools and plugins, and finally, ways to actually build your website. So that may seem like a lot of technical information, and some of you might think I look like Charlie here, but please don't be discouraged. We think building your own agency website is likely easier than you imagine. My goal with this session is to present this stuff to you in an easy to understand way and perhaps provide some new insight or clarity on something. So let's get started with domain names. A domain name is a unique, easy to remember address you type into a browser to reach a particular website. For example, Google's is google.com. Domain names make the internet easier to use for everyone. Without them, we would have to enter long strings of numbers to visit different websites. Those are called IP addresses. A lot of website builders offer free domains, which generally are not ideal as they come across as unprofessional or untrustworthy. So, when we're talking about domain names here, we're specifically discussing custom domain names that must be purchased. Let's talk more about why you need one for a good agency. Okay, so custom domain names help with your branding. They give you and your business a more professional look. A good website with your own domain builds credibility, expands marketing strategies and opportunities, and increases your brand awareness. So, how do you go about getting a custom domain name? Through different vendors referred to as domain registrars. So, a domain registrar is a company that allows you to purchase and register domain names. Domain name registrars are accredited by the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, or shortened to ICANN. It's a nonprofit responsible for managing all of the Internet's domain names. Some popular domain registrars are Google Domains, Domain.com, and Network Solutions, among many, many others. Additionally, domain names are usually available to add to your web hosting plan directly through the hosting company, and we'll talk about that more soon. Okay, so it's actually pretty easy to get one. When you're on a registrar's website, you just have to search for the domain name that you want to use and make sure it's available. When it comes to choosing domain names, keep it short and simple. Your domain name is part of your website's URL, and URLs that are filled with numbers and special characters can hurt search engine rankings. Search engines like Google or Yahoo give preference to easy to understand and simple domain names that deliver what they promise. So, what's an acceptable length? Research says like 6 to 14 characters. And remember, your domain name should reflect your brand, service, or industry.
Can I just let you know, Sarah, we got a great
Yeah.
question from Lewis here, which I think we would be appropriate to answer right now. He asks, if our website is by WordPress, do we need another domain name service? And I had a moment to think about it, of course, Sarah, because I got to read the question. So maybe I could just address it.
Yeah.
So what I would say to that, Lewis, is the answer is probably it depends. If your website is, and this would be true whether it's WordPress or Weebly or Wix or whatever, if it's like um, lewisrokeinsurance.wordpress.org or whatever, we would suggest it's probably better to get your own domain name. Now, if what you're saying is you do have, and I think in Lewis, your case, you do, if it's like roquetagency.com and it just happens to be pointed to WordPress, then you've got exactly what Sarah's talking about. So I guess just for people who are wondering, well, what's the difference between the one I get with my company that provides the website for me? That's when Sarah was saying it just looks more professional if your website is, whatever your domain is, .net, .com, whatever, and not some other name, .your name, .whatever. Yeah, and so we got Scott saying he uses Weebly and bought his domain name through them, and that's exactly what
Yes,
Sarah was talking about. Yes, a lot of the time you can just buy it right through that place. Yep.
that's
So back over
correct.
to you, Sarah.
All right. So, um, I was saying after looking up your desired domain on the registrar's website, the search results will let you know if it's available or not. This is the same if you're buying it through like Weebly, any like web hosting website. But for example, you can see here when I look this up, Sarah, let's see, Sarah at firefly.com to the left had an exact match, which meant it is available. So I could buy that right now for $12 a year. If you look over to the other side, I looked up sarazaeh.com, which is already registered. So that's an example of what it looks like when something is already registered. And there are examples of how you can maybe change it up. So I also, just for reference, I did actually buy that domain name earlier this year. So I knew that
I
would be a good
wondered, I
example.
wondered who had, Sarah. I'm glad it was you.
It's
Well,
me.
and the other thing that I would add on here too is we've all seen, like, one of the challenges of running a business is like a lot of domain names are taken. So if no one's asked it, but if you're wondering, well, is it better maybe for me to have, and Lewis, I'll use yours, you've got roquetagency.com. Well, what if that was taken, but roquetagency.net was available? That might be better than, like Lewis Roquet Agency of Murfreesboro, Tennessee.com, right? Which becomes so long that it's not very useful. So I think a lot of people understand that there are a lot of websites out there and wouldn't look at .net or .biz like they would have 15 years ago and said, why don't they have a .com? So
Right.
if you have a name that's nice and short and you can get it in one of the other, in fact, the one on the right, you can see where it shows .org is available, .net is available, and so forth. That may be a great option for you rather than something that has to be longer. So sorry to interrupt there, Sarah.
No, no, that's a very good point, and right on what I was discussing in this one. Um, One of the benefits of going through a third-party registrar rather than right through the hosting is if you wanted to, you could go ahead and reserve a domain name, and then if you wanted to intend on building a website later, you could, or of course, buy it through the hosting company, and you can do it all at the same time. Um, Let me see. So you can see that there are some interesting insights and suggestions about the domain names when you do searches, including the different domain endings that Fritz had mentioned, like .com, .net, .org, etc. When picking your domain ending, generally speaking, .com is still the best choice. From what I've researched, roughly 43% of all domains have a .com extension, making it more what people expect to see. While Google has actually confirmed that your choice of the domain ending does not impact your search rankings, it does affect customer perception. So a lot of people might view some of the weirder ones like .art as a little untrustworthy. So, as I mentioned earlier, when you buy a domain name, you're registering it, and it's registered for a year. Some registrars may offer like multi-year registration. But much like Amazon Prime or any other subscription, you will be able to renew your domain name when the initial period finishes. And you'll usually be notified by the registrar to do so if you're not set up on automatic payments. Um, Prices vary based on the actual extension, like the .com or .tech or .org. A typical domain costs between $10 and $20 per year. Once you purchase your domain, you will be able to easily link it to a web host if you didn't purchase the domain name directly through the hosting website.
There was a real quick question too, by the way, Sarah. Someone asked, should we purchase all popular extensions for a domain? So what do you think?
Um, that's a good question. That is a strategy you could use. Some people will buy up multiple domains, or some companies rather, and then just have them all redirect to your main website. That can be a lot of work and isn't really necessary. So I would maybe err on not doing that initially. It's something you could look into doing later, but it's not necessary.
And I would tend to agree with that as well. By the way, let's see, Charles comments here that Google's a great place to buy it because it includes privacy in the yearly price and prevents you from getting hundreds of spam calls and emails. And all I'll just say on that real quick is there is something to that. When you register a site, there's a spot where whoever owns the site, their information is registered.
Hmm.
And your email address that you put in there will probably start getting a bunch of junk email. So you can often add privacy, or it sounds like in Google it's included, so that information is, well, actually what happens is they put their own email address and they're not yours, so that you don't get all that spam and junk. So that might be
Right.
worth even if it's like 15 bucks a year for privacy, it's probably worth $1 a month to not get all those spam emails. It'll save you some time.
Yeah, and I'm not like paid by Google or anything, but I do actually use Google domains for my websites that I've purchased in the past, and it does include it, I think. And I think my domain's only $12 a year, and I have a .com, so not a bad registrar to look into. Any other questions?
Those are the ones I think we've got for now. So as there are
Okay.
others, we'll let you know.
All right, so now we have our own domain name and things are getting pretty serious. So what's next? Let's consider the pages to build on your website with your fancy new domain name. We'll talk about how to build them a little later in the session, but first let's discuss the content of the pages. So some pages on your website can be mostly like text-based, such as like an about page or a blog. Others use plugins and other web tools like a contact page or customer self-service page. What you're seeing here is a screenshot of the quick website I mocked up using Google Sites and the list of pages created on there. While there are many types of pages you can build for your website, we wanted to share some pages we think are most important. First, let's start with the home page. Your home page is kind of like a first impression. Use this page to tell people about your agency and what you do or provide. The home page is the front door of your site and should be attractive with high quality images and clear details. The ideal home page must be packed with valuable information, attractive, and tempting the client to stay longer. Consider making a video to embed on the home page describing your agency and the services offered. Additionally, it's becoming increasingly popular to put the majority of your website's functionality all on the homepage, which seems to appeal to most prospects and customers using mobile devices. That being said, let's move on to other important pages or content for your agency website. Next is the Contact Us page. The contact page is where your site visitors can find all the ways to connect to your business. Now that pretty much everything can be done online, people do expect to be able to connect to you in several ways, including a contact form, emailing, texting, calling, social media links, maybe live chat, or scheduling appointments online, all from a convenient, easy to use website. You can also use the page header or footer to display contact information on all of the pages on your website, but you should have a dedicated page that repeats this information and offers people a short form that they can use to message your company. Next, let's discuss About Us pages. Your clients are looking forward to interacting with you through your website, and the About Us page is the best spot to introduce yourself and your staff. Consider including your personal and genuine story, and be sure to describe your credentials, experience, and philosophy that differentiates you from your competitors. The overall purpose of the About Us page is to present yourself as reputable, experienced, and professional, and a professional insurance agent.
Here's a real quick
So,
question too from Lewis, by the way. Again,
yeah.
he said, what are your thoughts on using a request a quote tab versus contact us? And I had a moment to think about that, Sarah, if you don't mind.
Sure.
My thinking, Lewis, is I would have both. And we'll talk about quoting in a little bit. But one thing about the contact us page is that everybody looks for it. They expect websites to have it. Also, generally an about us page or something like that too. Google search, sorry, when Google crawls your site, it expects to have that, and that helps too. So I would suggest having both. And actually, one other thing I could say, like on the About Us page, if anybody were to go to fireflyagency.com and look, we've tried to, we've got like a little video of us doing a service day, and we've like put a, we'll talk about plugins later, but we did a plugin that puts our Instagram feed on the bottom of that page, so we don't have to update it, but it puts it there. We just felt like that's ways people could get to know us better, other than just a static page or just something that's like, I started in the insurance business when I was, this very cookie cutter. So I think the About Us page is a real place to, let yourself shine.
I agree. All right. So, um, the last important page we wanted to promote for your agency website is a claims page. A claims page is a great way to enable customer self-service and customer satisfaction. The purpose of this page is to offer a list of the insurance carriers that are associated with your agency and the direct contact information for the claims department for each of them. This is a way to how I think of it is to kind of like have the promise available because when you're selling your product, it's not tangible, it's insurance. So having this claims page right there is like to me is like the product. It's a way that the customers can go in and get what they need done when they do have something unfortunate happen where they do need to file a claim. So we do think that's an important one to consider adding.
And related, even back when I had my own agency, sometimes if someone called in and needed a claims number, this is where I would go. I go to my own
Exactly.
website's claims page because you're like, oh, there's a bunch of numbers. Where do I go? So you can use it too.
Well, and then you can incorporate it into your existing like customer service word tracking. You can always have a place that you can direct customers. You can say, go to the, and it's on your own website, so it stays with the branding. I think it's just overall a good idea to have the claims page for customers to go to. You could call it like a claims portal. You could come up with different names for it. But outside of those four that we discussed, there are, again, a lot of possibilities when it comes to building your website and the pages to include. A few more options to consider that will add some good functionality to your site is a blog or learning center, a page describing the insurance products that you offer, maybe an FAQ, a frequently asked questions section, perhaps a page dedicated to the importance of umbrella policies or why you should have an insurance agent, like explaining the importance of independent agents, maybe a customer self-service portal, or maybe an online quoting portal. More on those last two options soon, which we can implement using plugins on the website. All right, so before we wrap up the pages section, this Granny and Ron Burgundy over here are reminding us about web design. It's important to make sure the pages look and function well and that they are optimized to perform well on mobile devices. I would imagine a large percent of the market searches for things primarily on their mobile device. I know that's like how I look at everything, but I am a guilty millennial, so I'm only speaking for millennials there. But it is important to be able to have the optimization. People use their phones, iPads, you never know. Most web hosting companies offer mobile optimization options already built in and usually have aesthetically pleasing themes to choose from for your convenience. All right, let's get into the tools and plugins for your website. A plugin is a piece of software that adds new features or extends functionality to your website. They're sometimes called apps or tools. At their core, plugins allow you to add features to your website without someone having to code them in for you. That being said, other plugins can easily be added that aren't in the plugin library. Pasting, like copy and pasting a code, you can see that in the bottom right, the embed from web. And that's something that you would actually use with for our Firefly agents if you wanted to utilize consumer quoting portal on your website or client center that we'll talk about soon. You would embed it just by copying and pasting a code into a box. So
And the only thing I'll say on
yeah,
that real quick is that might seem real complicated to people who are like, oh my gosh, code and stuff. But seriously, if you have something, from some web provider, it is so easy to add it. They'll say, this is the code. You literally copy and paste this text, you paste it into your website in a spot where the website's expecting code, and
right,
sites have a different way of doing that. And then it's just there. You don't have to code it, yourself,
right. It's
worry about the
literally
design.
easy
It
as
is it is
copy
like,
and paste.
yes, and that's why they call it a plugin. I mean, some of those things really are that simple. So just in case people look at that and panic a little bit.
Yes, we hope there's no panic. A lot of web hosting companies make this very easy with essentially plug and play with their plugins. You can see some of examples of menus of like their what they would call an app marketplace or a plugin marketplace. Literally, they just have buttons that say add to your website. Very easy to add them in. Some examples of plugins include web forms, blogs, live chat, maybe adding a map to show where your office is if you have brick and mortar, an online booking option, customer self service, online quoting, maybe e commerce, online marketing, SEO. There's so many options for plugins. Live chat is something you are likely familiar with and may have used on maybe carrier websites or other websites for customer support. With a live chat plugin, anyone visiting your site can instantly send you a message and start a chat. You can chat back at any time, even from your mobile device, which is really handy, especially for the independent agent. Live chat is great for building relationships with your prospects, increasing sales, and boosting existing customer satisfaction. Most vendors offer some simple automations that can be set up with them as well, such as creating like automatic replies when somebody sends you a live chat that will just say, thank you for sending our agency a message. We'll be back with you within the next 24 hours or whatever. So a lot of them offer some simple little features that you can set up as well. More on the live chat soon.
Yeah, next week.
That's right, a little early preview. Next, let's chat about customer self-service. So there are several ways to implement this type of idea into a website, but the one I'm going to discuss with you today is through the management system vendor that we work with here at Firefly called EZLynx. Um, they have a feature called Client Center. And Client Center can help your customers boost efficiency, excuse me, can help you and your customers boost efficiency by giving your customers 24/7 access to their policies, documents, and ID cards. With Client Center, customers could be able to print and share the documents easily that they need and perhaps even make changes to their coverage. There, it does take, of course, some setup in the background, like manually adding and making sure they have their ID cards, like Accord forms in there for them. But this is a pretty great tool. You can see the way it looks on mobile is pretty much exactly how it looks on the web. Um, if you have more questions about this for our Firefly agents, you can get in contact with me anytime after this, and I will be happy to tell you more about it. Along
Yeah,
the
and
same
the only other
lines,
thing I'll add
oh,
is this is
yeah,
one of those plugins, right? This is one of those things
yes,
where you don't have to design it or everything just has to be set up behind the scenes so you can turn it on. And someone has asked how much utilization do you get with Client Center? The answer to that one actually is it really depends on the agent, right? Because you could have Client Center on your website, but if you really want it to work, every time you have a new piece of business written, you'd want to be able to say to people, hey, welcome, and welcome to the agency. And by the way, there's this thing called Client Center, and here's where you click to go to it on my website, and maybe have a couple emails a year that remind people that it's there. It's the kind of thing that would probably take a few times to tell people, and they go, aha, and begin to realize that it's
right.
there. So you'd have to basically teach your customers that that tool is
Yes.
there.
Have to perhaps incorporate it into like the new business paperwork that you give to them or Otherwise, find a way to just incorporate it into your routine when you have new business to explain to customers how to do
Mhm.
that, perhaps as well as how to access the mobile app for their specific carrier.
Mhm.
Um, so, along the same lines, EZLynx also offers a solution for online quoting. Um, their online quoting tool is called Consumer Quoting Portal. And I have the screen on the left there shows you what it actually looks like to the customers. What they do is they just click a button on your website and it opens up a new page where they start entering their own data for you. They go through a couple different pages for auto quote, home quote, and the final page. There are a lot of different preferences that you can set up for this type of thing. You can see some of them on the other screen to the right there shows some of the different settings that we have, but you can narrow it down and perhaps have it be where they can't get any kind of final pricing, like it just submits it to you for you to run through the rater. And there's so much that you can do with this. It's not, I wouldn't say it's like overly complex. It can definitely be learned. There's a small curve, but luckily EasyLinks has a lot of learning materials like EasyLinks University and their YouTube channel to be able to figure this out pretty quickly. But I think it's a really awesome tool that they offer. And there are some third parties that offer, I believe, a similar type of service. I'm not quite sure what they are, but obviously I'm more familiar with this one because this is what we help our agents with all the time. All right. So moving on to how to actually build a website. We're going to talk about two different ways. One would just be DIY, build a website yourself directly through a web hosting platform, or to hire a third party. So first, let's start with do it yourself. This is where we were talking about web hosting companies. So web hosting, it just means that it's the website that has the server that runs everything in the background for your website. So it's where it's built. It's where you would go to log in and be able to edit your website and create pages and things like that. So some of the most well-known are Squarespace, WordPress, Google Sites, Shopify, Wix, Weebly, GoDaddy, and a few other that are shown here. They do have monthly costs. A lot of them have free versions, which usually don't work well for businesses because there are some limitations. Like, I don't think you can have a custom domain unless you pay. But luckily, when you do it yourself, depending on the specific web hosting company, it can be anywhere from $15 to $50 up a month. So that would be just a monthly fee to use those hosting websites. And don't be discouraged. It doesn't have to be as scary as it sounds to build your own website. A lot of companies nowadays have, again, what I call plug and play capability with building. And it's literally most of the time it just goes through a series of questions when you first get started to ask essentially like how savvy you are with being able to build a website. And they have very easy automated ways to be able to get a really nice looking functioning website pretty quickly without any knowledge of being a web designer. So that being said, I did actually go through and just sort of start making a mock website with the web hosting company called Wix. I'm a little partial to them. That's the one I use for some of my personal websites, and I've always found them very easy to use. So I just wanted to give you guys a couple of examples of just what it looks like when you're starting to build your own website and kind of show you how easy it can be. So when you first get started with Wix, it initiates by asking you like what kind of website are you creating. So here I would have put like insurance agency. The next page just asks you essentially your skill level with creating a website. So when I went through this, I clicked this is my first time. So the next screen after you click on that gives you two options. On the left is the much easier option where essentially it has computer AI that will, based on a few questions and some simple templates, will quickly create a website for you. Or if you are a little more savvy with creating your own website, you can go ahead and use a more complex editor to the right. But I went ahead and clicked Start Now for the Wix ADI to create the website for me. So when I clicked on that, the next page just showed me a small sampling of a theme to choose from. So I went ahead and clicked, I think Breeze was the one that I went with. So once you click on a design and you've already input what type of industry that you are, what type of website that you're making, it will generate different home pages for you to choose from. So you can see, I mean, they're pretty nice. They already say like introducing Sarah's agency and welcome to Sarah's agency, and has like our packages. I didn't type any of that in there. That was all just based off of me inputting that I want to create an insurance agency website and what colors I want to use. So
Well,
they
and
look
can
pretty
I,
good.
yeah, and I was going to say, just to comment on that, you'll see that it says there you can easily customize your colors,
Mm-hmm.
images, and more. So if you think of last week, if you've decided, these are the colors that I want for my agency. Now, if you haven't, maybe you put something like this together and you say, you know what, I like those. I'm going to make those my colors. You choose from some preset templates or groups of colors. But the idea here would be to come up with a brand standard and say, okay, if these are the colors, then I'm going to have my business card match. I'm going to have, if I make any flyers to email out to customers, I'm going to make them match. So you can have that consistency whether they're looking at your business card, your website, or anything else like that. So I just thought it's kind of fun that it says that right there. And how would you make those colors? Or use the hex codes and stuff like TJ showed last week.
Yes. When you pick any of these templates when you're first starting, you're not stuck with them. You can always go into the editor at any time after you create a website to make adjustments to either the way it looks and feels or the functionality of it. So on Wix, once I picked the homepage design that I liked, I went ahead and asked me to add some pages to my website with suggestions. Um, and again, they have preset images and preset text in there that if you wanted to, you could just replace the images with your own and tweak the text a little bit, and you could have a website pretty quickly. But of course, it's better to customize it and not have a cookie cutter website.
And
That
can I say
being,
one real quick thing
yeah.
on that too? I think it's Brandon Bergana, is an agent who I love his site in that he took some, or I don't know whether he took them or a friend did, like photos around his town
Oh, yeah,
that
local
people would
pictures.
recognize, right? And so like maybe this one has like the one on the left, it's a happy family. And by the way, it's a great image, right? I'm not saying don't use it, but if you
Right,
happen to know that, like in my little town, near the downtown, there's a statue down by the river and everybody'd recognize it. Like if you put stuff like that on your site, those are some of those little ways that you can also take your site from like looking sharp to also feeling like, oh yeah, this is my town. I want to talk to this
right.
person. So
From looking sharp stock images to looking
yeah,
sharp and being personalized. And
yeah.
I feel like that adds another level of like trust for some reason, and just customer satisfaction knowing that you're truly local and
Hmm.
wanting to show that. So yeah, that is a good idea to just take some local pictures and incorporate those and replace that instead of the stock images. Um, all right, so after Wix asked me to add some pages, the last thing I did was to suggest some additional things to add to my website based off of all of the information I had provided. And I thought it was interesting that the plugins that it suggested for my insurance agency website was
Oh,
live chat, bookings to schedule online, a blog, which would be a place you could put maybe articles about insurance and safety or local weather information. Um, and then an Instagram feed, like Fritz had mentioned, that we actually have on our Firefly website. And then just right below that, you can just literally check a box to add more of these very easily to your website. Lastly, once you've gone through all those pages and have a basic setup, it brings you to the website editor screen. So I just wanted to show you guys what this looks like, so it's not too intimidating thinking about going in and editing your website. Everything for this particular one for Wix, everything is on the left. You can hover your mouse over any of the buttons to see what they do. And again, it's pretty much plug and play. There's not a lot you can do to really mess it up, so to speak. Um, so, all
Sarah,
right.
somebody just asked,
Yeah,
does Wix, and I think the answer is yes, but I think you'd know, does Wix offer domain name registration and
they
hosting
do.
there too?
Yes.
Okay, yep. So the answer to that one, Amanda, or Armando, excuse me, is yes. Mhm.
Yes, it's one of the, of course, one of the premium options, but I believe most web hostings do. But I know for a fact Wix does as well. Um, all right, so that was the last screenshot I wanted to share for the DIY option of building a website. The other option we had mentioned earlier is maybe hiring someone else to do it for you. Um, if you aren't sure about building your own website still, there's a lot of options you could go for this, but just a word of the wise, you probably shouldn't go with the cheapest freelance web designer you can find, or you might end up kind of feeling like this poor guy here that's getting this unique tattoo. So, that being said, when you're hiring a third party, to me, the two categories that are kind of the biggest options are either doing a freelance web designer or going to a web design or a website building company. Freelance, you could use something like Fiverr. Sam, that works here with Firefly, he really recommended using Fiverr. And I went in just quickly and typed build a website or build website insurance agency. And I found all kinds of professional freelance web designers that like specify in insurance websites, but there's also, you could just say website in general. There's all kinds of people out there that you can hire to build the website for you. And it's approximately, when you do Fiverr, when you have someone that's a web design or freelance, that's going to be the lower end of the spectrum that I have here on this slide.
In
150,
terms of the
maybe.
cost, yeah.
Yeah, in terms
Hmm.
of, in terms
Yeah.
of cost, like when you hire someone, you're going to have an initial like startup fee, if you will, and then you'll have a continuing monthly fee because you're still going to have to pay for the web hosting regardless. Um, One thing to consider when you have someone else building a website for you is what web host that they are going to be using for that, because if it's a freelance artist, you're likely going to be the one that's going to continue doing the maintenance. So you want to be comfortable with editing in that particular web hosting platform. Now, on the higher end, you could hire a website building company. The example I have here is Lead Source. They are one of the, I guess, top industry specialists for specifically insurance agents. They can build a comprehensive website for you, and they have like 24/7 customer support and all these options dedicated specifically for agents, but they are definitely on the higher end of things. That was at the maybe $700 plus range just to get started, and then they have monthly fees as well. Um, but that is always one of the options you can do, is to hire somebody else to do that for you. And again, it would either be a freelance person for maybe a little bit more affordable, and then you would have to do the maintenance, or you could go find yourself a third party company that would build it, maintain it for you, and um, that would be on the higher end of the cost spectrum.
Yeah, and I'll just mention here that Josh Stevens, I was just saying a thanks to that there, says he's had a good experience with Forge 3, about
Forge 3.
$250 a month and great to work with, Forge 3. So if people want to check that out, I mean, obviously, what we've tried to do, what Sarah's done in this session is to put together a few options and let you pick what is best. And we don't want
Right.
somebody to say, you said this was going to be awesome. What we're saying is there's a lot of
There are
different ways you can do
examples.
it.
Yes.
And you'll need to pick what fits best for you. But Josh, we do appreciate that that is one that's working well for you.
Yes, thank you. And anybody that's in the session right now, please feel free to share any of your web hosting experiences or any of the website builder companies that you've had success or maybe not success with. It's always
Yeah.
good to share that information because, again, like Fritz said, these are just suggestions. These aren't like the ones we tell you to go use. It's just Fiverr is a well-known
Hmm.
freelance like marketplace, but there are other marketplaces that you could check and other businesses
We talked about a
outside of
few of
lead
those
source.
last week, actually. Two Fiverr was one of
Awesome.
them. Yep. Hmm.
Perfect. So now you have a reason to go back and watch and see what the other ones are. All right. So either you built it yourself or you had someone build it for you, but now your website is built. Website is done. False. A website is never done. This is in here just to remind you that as soon as you finish putting on all your content together and things have gone live, and you're getting live chats, maybe you're getting leads, just don't forget that your website will need maintenance. Whether you're having a blog that you're keeping up with articles, or simple things like maybe a link broke, and you'll have to go through and update whatever broke. But otherwise, just remember that don't just let it sit there once it's done. You might want to double check and see if there's typos that you can go back and edit, or otherwise just remember that a website requires maintenance. All right, and with that being said, we are at the end here. Does anybody have any questions about what we've gone over?
And we've had some great ones along the
Yeah.
way. So if anybody has any others, go ahead and put them down. If not, I've got two thoughts I'll share, by the way, that I just thought of that that could help you, save you some money, or save you some trouble. And then of course we got the drawing for the $100 Visa card. So don't bail yet if you want to be a part of that. The two things was this. One is I got into trouble once with my own little agency back in the day. In fact, here let's just switch to this real fast. We had a little website, and one of our carriers had wedding insurance, right? And I thought, oh, I'll do a little thing on wedding insurance. And it must have been about the time that Kate and William were married, right, in England. So I grabbed a picture off the internet and I put it on that site. And I'm not kidding you, like 5 years later, I get a letter from a law firm saying, we represent Getty Images, who owns that image that you used, and we have a date and timestamp thing that you used it. You don't have a license. You pay $800, and if you don't, we'll take you to court, and we're going to ask for like 2,000. And I thought, is this a scam or whatever? I looked it up, and no, it's not. And you totally lose if they go to court. So the point here would be,
Make sure it's
and I see,
copyright free
yes, well,
images that
that's
you're
right.
using.
So they're images you either buy a license for, and you can go to Shutterstock or iStock Photo. It's usually around $10 an image, which might seem expensive, but it is way less expensive than $800 and the stress of that. And then, and there are also some websites like Pixabay and
I
Pexels and some
think
others.
there's some free ones like Unsplash, like
Yes.
Unsplash.
Hmm.
That's a great place to go to get. It's basically a bunch of photographers will go and dump all their pictures for people to be able to choose copyright free. But you can also, I believe, when you're doing a Google search, if you go in and specify your search and images, you can ask for copyright free images when you're doing Google searches. So just overall, make sure that you're not using copyrighted information
Hmm.
commercially.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing, while I'm going to mark a couple things as questions here that we can answer is, oh, Lewis says he's dealing with that very issue right now. I'm afraid he
Oh
means maybe the
no.
image one. So it is something to watch out for, sincerely. The other thing I was going to say is that building a website on its own doesn't get your business. It doesn't get people going
No.
to it, right? You need to
Market.
promote it. And yes, and market it. And one of the simplest, freest ways to do that is your Google business listing. Whenever I go to find a business and it pulls it up on the right, here's the business listing, almost always the first thing I want to click on is their website.
Hmm.
And so it's a really easy way to do that. As
Do we
far
have a previous? Didn't we talk about Google My
We
Business or
did,
no?
yeah, that
Okay,
was a
yeah.
season
I'm
one,
gonna say if we that in
topic.
season one we discussed Google
It
My
was one of the
Business.
first ones we did. So if you go to the agent portal, there's the one on building your business with Google business listing and getting reviews is what that one was about. But that is like one of the most important places to put your website. So we had two questions here, I think, that I wanted to highlight here. One from Angela is, if we're co-branded and have a Firefly website design, can we add and adjust it as well? That, by the way, is something that we did for a time. We don't build websites for people anymore. But I would say the answer for you, Angela, is yes, absolutely. That can be adjusted. Ben is who you'd contact on that, and probably he might. I'm trying to think if he can give you the login to do that on your own if you'd like to take charge of that. We had another question here from Mike. If you have a site that's been up but not updated in years, where would you go to make it happen? The answer is that'll depend where it's hosted, right, Sarah?
Yes. So if you would need to determine which web hosting company your website's on, and you would have a login, like a username, account, and password that you would need to log in and go in and update it. If you're not sure, it should say when you're looking at your website, perhaps at the very bottom on the footer, it might mention who the web hosting company is down there. And then you can always do like forgot password and go through that whole process to be able to access your account again. But yes, you would
Yep.
go through the web hosting company, or if you hired someone, you would reach back out to them.
Yep. And then the last one I think that we've got here is this one. How much help and what type of help do you provide to Firefly agents for their websites? From Tommy here. The answer I'd say right now is this is the help that we're offering, right? We did, as I say, for a time, have where we would help put websites together for people, and found that it became a time consuming thing for us and took us away from things that we do best. So what we could do, what we definitely do is, and actually Sarah, you'd probably really be our person for this, is to help you take the tools that exist and combine them with the website that you've got. So
Right.
this recording will be emailed out to everybody who participates today. We'll actually make a page in the agent portal that'll have all this, as well as some links to some of these providers. And again, we'll email it to the people who are not Firefly agents, just so that you can have access to this. But our aim is to try to help point you in the right direction to people who really do website design, because honestly, we even thought, well, what if we charged a couple $100 to do websites for people and so forth? But we felt like, let's focus on what we do best, and let's let the people who are the designers and the web people, like on Fiverr and elsewhere, do that. So my recommendation for building one, if you know you don't want to do it yourself, but you don't want to spend like $500 a month on one, might be to go to Fiverr and have somebody build you a good basic website. And you can always see in their examples of their work too.
Hmm.
So it's not like you just have to, it's not like a lottery. And you say, I wonder if I
Right.
like what they
Right.
do, and they'll
Can
might
review
make
the
modifications
portfolio.
and stuff based on what you do, or they'll use the photos you provide. So
I'll add to that that our Firefly
yeah.
agents also have a portal, an agent portal that we built specifically for them that has a knowledge center or like a library. And all of our agents have access to these sessions that are previously recorded, as well as a typed out article version of them, as well as a lot of other curated articles that we have about our systems, carriers, and probably some things that could be implemented for your website and stuff like working from home, all kinds of good information.
Yeah, that's a good point. So let's see if there were any other questions that popped up. Oh, here's one actually. Okay, yeah. So this is the last one I think that I see here. Jason asked, do we offer any articles that you can publish? That's a really interesting question, and the answer is no. And there's a really good reason why. Um, Google counts as less valuable articles that appear like the same article on multiple websites. It's considered to be more like stock content that won't rank as high in search and that kind of thing. So whereas we'd considered doing that, I see somebody likes your Baby Yoda there too, on the shelf. Where we considered that, what we realized is it probably would actually end up hurting if we had a bunch of Firefly agents putting the same thing out there. So what I think, like a
You
lot of
could
agents
reach
could
out to
do,
carriers. I know carriers offer a lot of articles
they've
and
got
other
some,
documents
although you
and
can
things.
run into the same challenge, right? And what I've thought to myself is, I think what a lot of people really want on a site is, or what I think your website's one of the best things it can do, is build people's confidence in you and your credibility. And so sometimes that is, I think, if I were an agent, I'd probably post, like, have a blog, and and if people would let me, I'd take a picture of them smiling. Now maybe they wouldn't, but I would put up success stories. Here's customers we helped. This person came to us, and this is their situation. This is what we did. And maybe in there you can say, here was a coverage gap that we fixed, or here was
Right.
here was something we did with telematics because they had teenage drivers, and look how much money it saved them. That would, I think, if I'm going to your site and clicking on it, I'd say, wow, Jason does good work. He is helping real people and stuff. And my guess is most real life people aren't dying to read an article about liability coverage, or they can find that in Wikipedia, right? But what they want to know is, can you as an agent actually help me? And that's where
Right.
I think websites can let you do that kind of thing.
I
Let's
think
see. Oh,
having your website just be a source of functionality for prospects and customers, whether they're quoting themselves, filing a claim, or looking up your contact information, or sending you a live chat, those things are really important. I
mm-hmm.
feel perhaps more so than having like a huge knowledge base. I do think maybe having a learning center for explaining things like maybe how um, customer service works at your particular agency, and
Hmm.
like what your hours of operation are and stuff like that would be good. But
Even things that
overall,
people
like
like,
Fritz said,
can I pay over the phone with you? And with most of your
right.
carriers, you can. There's things you can put on there that'll help people feel like, yeah, this person, because remember, they're finding you online, so they're probably not the kind of person who's going to walk in every month and make a payment. So I think what Sarah's saying is you can address those things that they'll be asking about.
Yes.
Charles mentions in the chat here as well. He says, I think HubSpot has a free Google SEO course that can help with deciding what to put in your site. HubSpot does have some great stuff on their site about things to put on your website. So that's a great suggestion,
Yes.
Charles.
Yeah.
Well, and somebody just had a comment here about I've used some pictures in the past that I shouldn't, just off the internet, going to be careful in the future, which is good. But what I learned is it can be stuff even from years ago, so, like that you posted. So if you
Hmm.
have stuff that you don't have the rights to, it is worth taking a couple hours on a Saturday or whatever and clean it up and find stuff to replace it with. We'll put on the website some websites that you can go to get images you don't even have to pay for. And of course, your own pictures, those are always yours. And in a pinch, it's funny how sometimes I found myself spending 15 minutes looking for a picture online. And then I'm like, well, I could just go take a picture of this in my house.
Yes, using your own pictures is always the
Yeah,
safest way. That's why we were
yeah,
saying to replace some stock images. If you just go to your little downtown or your local neighborhood or whatever and take
that's
some
right. Yep, your
iconic
camera is always
pictures of
safe.
local, yeah, your camera is always safe. And phone cameras nowadays have such good quality that you can get very acceptable images from a phone.
Well, and then Casey, let's see, is that, sorry, we got a few things going down here. Someone was saying that you can do, oh, here we go. Sorry, we got so many things here in the chat. It's a little hard to scroll through it. Was saying
Yes.
that like Wix may have a library of photos you can use with your subscription that you don't have to worry about, which is another great point.
Yes. One thing about Wix, again, they don't pay me, just like Google doesn't, but
Right,
Wix has
right.
a lot of their own like native versions of plugins. They have their own chatbot, they have their own blog, they have their own like e-commerce that is like a more affordable option and sometimes a little more basic, but it's nice to have the basic tools to test out, and maybe if you wanted to upgrade you could, but it's nice to have those available.
Yeah, good options. Well, I think we've left enough time for everybody to do that, and we're right at the top of the hour. So thank you, everybody. Thanks again, Sarah, and we hope we see you next week.